Hello, this is our last iteration number 6. This one is also optional or extra credit, and we're gonna try to see how we can respond to the user entering an amount in the text field, not the test field. So where we are now, we completed 5 iterations. 4 of them are required and 1 extra credit or optional. In this final iteration, we're gonna need to respond to the text field and the user entering value in the text field. So we need to understand a little bit how the text field work and so on. So let's switch to the API documentation. And we looked before in the first iteration at the text field, class and or the component. It's a class, and looked at all the different tasks. So the task for accessing the text attribute, sizing the text, managing the behavior, editing, clears on begin editing, clears, and then setting and managing overlay views, accessing the delegate. So there's a delegate here. So I jumped into the delegate because I know from the Becker view that the delegate was the one that had the selection event. So here is the receiver delegate, which is of type UITextFieldDelegate, and it says that the delegate responds to editing related messages or events. So let's look at the text field delegate. So you click on it, and here is the text field delegate. Defines the messages sent to the text field about a sequence, and then here are the tasks. Manage the editing. So this is text field should begin editing. These are different events. So what the delegate does, the power of the iOS is that it captures so many different events on the text field, and every time one of those events happens, it notifies the delegate of the text field. The programmer or the developer can respond to those events by implementing any of those functions from the text field delegate. All of these functions in the text field delegate are optional. They are not required, so you don't have to implement them. You just implement the one that you want. So this text field should begin editing, did begin editing, should end editing, did end editing, should change characters in range, should clear, and should return. The should return if the text field should process the pressing of the return button. So that's what this the function that gets notified when the user presses the return button. The other functions are interesting too. Ask the delegate if editing should begin. So that's at the beginning of the text field and editing, and if you want to do something to start the editing process. Yes, if editing session should be initiated, otherwise return no to disallow editing. So if you want to check something before you let the user edit or not, you can do that here. Did begin editing, it tells you that the editing has started, and then you can do something when the editing starts. And then the same, should end editing and did end editing is the same thing here. Did end editing, called after the text field resigns its first responder. Remember, resigning first responder that we used to dismiss the keyboard. So that event triggers that the did end editing event, and you can respond as a delegate of the text field. You can respond to that event and do something. Something here, this happens a lot if you're connecting to databases, connecting to data, you want to do some calculations, you want to do some formatting based on what the user enters and so on, so you can do that in here. So let's go ahead and continue. So the scope is to convert the amount as soon as the user enters the amount in the text field. We're going to test by entering a number, hitting the enter on the keyboard. No changes in the model, no change in the view. We're going to need to do 2 changes in the controller. Confirm the controller to the UITextFieldDelegate protocol. We're going to use the same controller to be the text field delegate as well. we're overloading our controller with responsibility. It's number one, it's responsible as a controller to the screen. Then it became the delegate for the picker view, both picker views, then data source for both picker views, and now we're going to also give it the responsibility of a delegate to the text field. This is fine in an application like ours with all the actions that the delegates and data source need to do are interconnected. So we don't have to worry about managing data and managing memory. If the actions were not connected and were separate, then perhaps you would need to do separate delegates classes for them. So we first need to make the controller a delegate or implement the UITextFieldDelegate protocol. Then we need to implement the function textFieldShouldReturn, and we're going to do something like we did before, redirect to the convert function, because there's no need to reinvent the wheel. The convert function already knows how to do all the conversion. So it's implemented because there's no implementation of textFieldShouldReturn already. The protocol has only a definition, not implementation. So let's go ahead and do that. So first, go to my the view controller and add another responsibility called UITextFieldDelegate. Here it is at the end. So now my class view controller has all these responsibilities, including UITextFieldDelegate. After you define it as a UITextFieldDelegate, you have to tell the text field that this class is the delegate. So we go to the storyboard, and same like we did with the picker views, we select the text field, control, drag to the view controller, and then here is the option of making it a delegate. So we say yes, we want to be the delegate of that text field. So now if you click on the view controller, you can see that it is also the delegate of the text amount. So we go back. So now we define the text field as the view controller as a text field delegate. We connected it to the actual text field. What is left is to implement the function textFieldShouldReturn. So here is the function textFieldShouldReturn. Hit enter, and all what I need to do is to call the convert function to perform the conversion. So convert. The text field should return wants you to return a Boolean value. So you want to say, should it process the return? I want to say yes. So before it returns, I call the convert function, and then after that I can say return, and I can say return true. So return true is a Boolean. So you say, after I come back from convert, yes, the text field should return and should process the return of the key, of the go button. So let's try. So I'm going to enter an amount and hit the enter key or the go button on the keyboard and see if the conversion will work or not. Everything else should work the same. So here is my 10, and I'm going to hit go. So now we respond to the go button. You can change from one unit to the other. I can go back here, change the amount, and hit go, and the conversion is taking place. So you really now don't need to use the convert button at all. We are responding to actions that the user already doing on the app. One of the advantage of what we did here is we minimized the events that the user, or the interactions that the user need to do. Before we implemented the selection and the hit the enter, the user had to select, then click the convert button. So now they no longer need to click the convert button. So we saved that step. So we saved that one click. So our app now functions from just one action instead of two actions. The reduction of the number of actions that the user need to do on the app is a good user interface practice and a good development practice. You don't want the user to do things unnecessarily. The more you can capture of the natural events that happens in your app and respond to it, the better development and the better developer you will be. This concludes our unit converter application. I hope you enjoyed it and learned a lot. We learned a lot about the picker view, about the text field. We learned a lot about NS dictionary. We learned how to do some mathematical conversions. We learned how to convert from a string to numbers. We reinforced the use of the localized string with format to format strings. We learned about picker view events. We learned about delegates, about data source. We learned a little bit about protocols and so on, and how we can add more responsibilities to our view controller. So that will conclude our module number 3 and the unit convert.